Exactly.
right? And so that's my goal, is to get the word out, to invite more designers to learn about what their role is in design. Doesn't necessarily have to be that they get into biophilia or neuroaesthetics,
Yeah.
right? It could be green, it could be sustainable, right? But, what I've also learned is sustainability and green. If the materials in the product is all green and sustainable, but the end product is ugly, is it sustainable and green?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't sell it to my client, right? So they all have to work hand in hand with beauty, because our eyes and our brain are just going to process it, and it's going to make a big difference in the world.
Rose, I'm so happy to talk to you. And I was thinking, you've got such a beautiful name. I mean, Rose, like the beautiful flower, and you also work in an industry where we surround ourselves with so many beautiful things.
Yes. Well, I didn't start out as an interior designer. I used to be a software engineer.
Really?
Yes, but I always had a passion for the arts, architecture. My dad introduced me to drafting, but in our culture, it was unheard of because they thought I would starve. So you either had to be in the medical field or you had to be in the business engineering field.
I
And
see. Okay.
yeah,
Mm.
so I dabbled into the engineering field and loved it. But when my mom became terminally ill, I volunteered to get laid off so I could care for her. And I thought, okay, this would be the perfect time to try to go back to school to do architecture, interior design. But because my time was focused on her, I didn't go back to school until after she had passed away from cancer.
So sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. She was a nurse. And it's part of our culture, that the oldest take care, the oldest daughter take care of their parents. So I still had, my husband took care of our kids. My oldest was 17 at the time. My middle child was 11 and my youngest was 9. But that whole process started when my youngest was about 6. And they knew that I was taking care of their grandmother. The year before my mom passed away, we took care of his mom. So my children knew, that as a family, we took care of our elderly parents.
What a beautiful thing for your children to witness, and to see that you do that.
Yeah, and when I
Be
decided to
part
go
of
back,
that. Mm.
yeah, when I decided to go back to school, my youngest was in her final years of college. So I had to ask permission
Really?
to make sure, and I didn't know that my husband had kept a drawing when we first bought this house. It was the ugliest house, Petra, on the block.
Really?
And I refused to buy it. I refused to invest. And he asked me, what's your vision of the exterior? So on a piece of napkin, I drew it.
Really?
And then, yes. So had no, I just had my artistic abilities. I had my vision, but I had no training, no formal training. And then we hired someone like me back then, and she drew up the plans and didn't know that my husband kept those plans until I went back to school.
That's
And he
so
brought it out.
amazing.
Yes.
But tell
Yes.
me, as when you were younger, did you think about interior design as a possible career, or did you just want to do something artistically?
I just wanted to do something artistically. I love to draw. That's all I did. I
Really?
rearranged my room, redecorated my room, furniture, moved things around. My mom was really into the arts. I mean, when I would watch her decorate, I'm like, and she would drag us four kids to places, and I think back and I'm like, that style is coming back, or that taste is coming back. And she was she was a minimalist actually. Um, but she was opposite my dad. She didn't like the camping. She didn't like any of that. My dad introduced us to the camping, to living outdoors, and we enjoyed that. Um, so growing up, that's all I knew was going outdoors. But I didn't know at the time how to bring that in.
Okay.
So I only brought it in my own room, but nowhere else in the house. But so artistically, I love to draw. I love to test colors. But being that we didn't have the means, I had to just make do with what I had.
Okay. So did you grow up there in America where you are?
Yes, I did. So my parents were first immigrants to come to the United States.
Mm.
And so that's why they were very adamant with the kind of schooling that we were going to go to. And so we really didn't have a choice in the matter. But what they instilled in us was instruments. They love music. So we all played an instrument. What I didn't like is having to perform, because everywhere we went, we performed. Everywhere we went. But as I got older in high school, my mom loved the art of dance, Filipino folk dancing, in fact. And she would teach Filipino folk dancing in our garage.
That's
And we would
wonderful.
perform. We would perform all over the city at events. And so as I got older, I said, well, Filipino folk dancing requires a partner.
Oh,
Can't
okay.
get very many boys to engage, right? So that's when I started looking into Hawaiian dancing, Tahitian dancing, because it didn't require a partner. I could do it on my own.
Mm.
And then that's where I engaged in that as I got married, because I didn't need my husband. My husband artistically can sing. So he would sing the songs and I would dance to his songs. And we would perform at weddings or anniversaries. And then we got our children into
Wow,
it.
that's so beautiful.
Yes, my children grew up around music, around dance. And I'll give you a very good example. When COVID hit, my youngest daughter worked at a senior living, assisted living facility. And she's like, Mom, my seniors, they need interaction. What do you recommend? And I said, well, first of all, I said, have you ever heard of Pen Pal? And I said, you can find another living assistant in the Midwest or back East and have your seniors write letters. I said, for entertainment, I says, you have siblings and your parents who sing and perform. We have a portable karaoke machine. Pick their songs, their genre. And I said, then let your siblings, and your dad take off from work and you guys can go from apartment to apartment and
Oh,
sing.
that is so lovely.
That's what they did. And so the staff really enjoyed it. So they got their pom poms or their costumes, and they were like the background singers. And yeah,
That
my
is so
youngest
lovely.
daughter made it in the newspaper, the local newspaper. And that was one of the things that they remembered. She's moved on since then, but those were one of the things she's remembered that the residents remembered of her doing. So, and she's still in the field. She's a cardiac rehab, and she brought, is Bring Your Mother to Work Day.
Oh,
And so she
really?
brought me, and her patients would complain. And I would say, well, I said, the only time Tiana is mean is if you don't listen.
Oh, sweet.
So, yeah. And
But how beautiful that you raised your children also with, with the dancing and music and how they carry that with them then.
it's part of our culture. I mean, they got it from both sides of the family. Every Friday we would go to, my in-laws, bring our dinner. And then my husband's the youngest of 9. So everybody would perform, all the kids. So me being the in-law, I'm like, I don't sing, so I'll dance, but those were what we instilled in our children, what family was all about, what culture was all about, bringing music into our lives, bringing art into our lives, storytelling. My husband loved to gather all the nieces and nephews and do a storytelling. And they would all lay down, at their grandmother's house. And then my husband would start off with Once Upon a Time. And then each child, each niece or nephew would start a sentence and it would become a story,
Oh, wow. Oh,
you
that's
know.
lovely. Yeah.
And yeah, so those were some of the fond memories. And
Mm.
then on my side of the family, we would my children would ask what it was like for them to grow up. Because my mom grew up during the Japanese War, the invasion of Japan in the Philippines. And she would tell us the stories of that and how she came to America and why she instilled a lot of survival. How, she survived underground with art, humming songs, um, just things to get her by. And she was 5 years old when Japan invaded the Philippines. So imagine a 5-year-old underground, right? And so my husband and I, invested a lot of time in quiet time. What can my children do during quiet time, whether it be drawing? And that's what my dad did as well. He instilled in us um, quiet time after school. We would get our own notebooks and do things, whether it was writing our alphabets, doing homework, but drawing. And so we did the same thing. When our children we had a tragedy one year. My daughter was only 12 at the time, my oldest daughter. And I asked her to draw what she was feeling. And that really helped her deal with the tragedy. And so I never lost sight of that. And so with this personal tragedy of my youngest daughter, and how I became a biophilic designer was because of tragedy. Though she survived, I didn't know how it affected her internally, how it affected her brain, right? And so that's why setting that foundation of art. My youngest daughter was an avid photographer as a hobbyist, right? And so, I asked my son, take the day off. Let's take the train to San Francisco. Let's walk and see the iconic places that my daughter loved. Because she didn't even make it one block. She wanted to come back home. And so I knew I had to work on that. not as a mother. I had to switch gears and be that software engineer who had to solve a problem, and that my user was my daughter. So I couldn't look at her as my daughter. Yes, the love for her I had, but now I had to be the engineer, had to come up with experiments and what worked and what didn't work, right? And it took sleepless nights for me, crying nights for me to figure out what I needed to do for her.
But was this also where you then decided to do interior design in a different way? Because for me, it feels as if I'm almost thinking, is it in the last 10 years where things have changed so much, where we approach things in many different fields so much, but with the biophilic and the intentional design that you're talking about, was that all linked together? Did the one sort of encourage the other?
So before my mom passed away, she said, "You're very empathetic. You're very compassionate, just in general." And so she said, "You're good with seniors." I didn't know what that meant at the time, right? So I thought my niche was going to be baby boomers, empty nesters, right? So I was geared towards that because I understood, with my mother-in-law, with my own parents, right? But with the accident of my daughter, I didn't change. It was more of survival. What did she need at the time to get back to where she was? She, of my 3 children, was my happy baby. She was no longer in a happy place. So at the time, I didn't know about biophilia. I knew that our environment, there were a lot of health issues with our own environment. My son, when I was carrying my second child, I was bedridden. The doctors couldn't tell me why, but it was my environment. So my husband moved me out of my own house and moved me with my in-laws, so that because I had to be bedridden, nobody could tell me what it was. So I thought it was the environment, the materials in our house, the carpet, the paint, the indoor air quality. That's what I thought, right? So I started focusing on that. But as I had transitioned into what my daughter was going through, hers too involved the environment, the interior environment, the air quality, the paint, the things that she visually saw, her nervous system, right? How she was. And we didn't treat her any different with the accident. She still had a routine. We wanted her to have a routine, still make her feel as part of the family. But now I had to really focus on her own personal environment and why she didn't feel safe, why she went 360 degrees at the opposite end and was being violent, when I knew she was my happy baby. And it took a lot of tests. At the end of this whole thing, Petra, I just called myself a biophilic designer because that's all I knew. Having to deal with, she didn't like plants. So I knew biophilia was not just about plants. I played with color. I played with texture. I played with she didn't like her windows being opened. So I couldn't bring that indoor air quality in. So I had to use the essential oils to calm her, right? And so that's where I also learned about certain oils like lavender or orange to alert her, to wake her up. I kept journals of what she was telling me. And what I found was her brain was reenacting the accident on a daily basis. She couldn't tell me the difference of whether the accident was in a dream or if it was reality. And that, I said, well, why can't she figure out why, right? We got the best doctors for her. We got her a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and she allowed me to sit in on her sessions. But I realized they weren't getting to the heart of the problem. They were just letting her talk, but they weren't drawing her out. And so that's when I figured out she had an overstimulated brain that wasn't letting her sleep. And so one night, it was, a winter night, because when she told me she wanted to hurt herself, it was in January. I sat outside and looked at the dark sky and said, and I looked at, I recalled all the pictures she would send me, and it was of, the beautiful night sky of the Golden Gate Bridge or San Francisco, but it was always at night, right? And that's when it hit me. I said I was going to make her room all black. Black furniture, blackout, curtains, and to see if it would calm down her brain. And so slowly I started doing that. I didn't know if it was going to work. It took several months. It took about 6 months, because I started doing this in January. So around May, June of that same year, she came to us, my husband and I, and said, can I plan a vacation? Her favorite tennis player was Roger Federer, and he was going to retire at the US Open. She wanted to plan that vacation trip. And so we allowed her to put together that vacation. And she took about 2 weeks. She sent us an Excel spreadsheet. And I was laughing. We were both laughing, my husband and I, because I said, we're going to lose a lot of weight. And he goes, why? I said, have you noticed? I said, we're not eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We're on the go, 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 go. What was fascinating was she's into, what is it called? Chick flick movies.
Oh, yeah.
27 Dresses, and, right?
Yeah.
So she wanted to visit Central Park, where all these movies were made. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, without forcing her, I'm going to introduce nature things to her in that respect, right? And it did wonders. It really did. The environment, getting her outdoors. The last leg of our vacation was watching the US Open. And then she had pleaded with us if we could watch another game. And my husband and I, my husband said, whatever you did worked. And I'm like, oh, I don't know yet. Right. But she was able to get an internship job. She was able to get another part-time job, because she wasn't sure if she wanted to leave the assisted living yet until she got a job at a hospital. So she was working both. But I did tell her, that your brain needs to rest because you're always on the go, go, go. You have to make sure you eat. You have to make sure that you have time to socialize because she wasn't socializing at all. I remember the remark she said was, Mom, she says, all my friends hate me because I don't respond to anything. And so I would reach out to her friends and tell them what was going on. And even though they would come over, it was overwhelming for her. So I had to be careful. And this happened in, 2017. It's only been within the last 2 years that I saw the change in her. She's going out. I think the biggest test was when she wanted to do a 5-country tour with her best friend. She went to Switzerland, Hungary, Budapest, Iceland, and I was really skeptical. And I didn't want to show her my fear. So what I did was, all I said is, she goes, Mom, what gifts do you want from those countries? I said, I don't want any gift. I'm into architecture and landscaping. So take pictures of those for me and just send it to me. And then show me the variety of foods of what you're eating. And so she did that. So that's how I knew she was alive. So now she just, about 3 weeks ago, she left for Japan. And she's in the Philippines now, and she made it through the typhoon, and so now she's enjoying, so I can see the difference. And it's just within the last year, she came to me and she said she's ready to move on from that environment of the Black. And so I allowed her to pick the paint color. So we picked the paint color. She wanted to go back to using blackout curtains. So I tested that. I said, well, let's put blackout sheets first. So I had put it up on a weekend. She never woke up to go to work.
Oh.
So I said, so that's out.
Yeah.
That's out. I said, would you settle for, she loves coffee. So I said, would you like espresso color shades? I said, and I'll make it fun for you. I'll get you a remote so you could sit from your bed, the light filtering through it. She could still see a little bit of the light coming in, not too much. And you have control of how much light you want. And being that she's also in the medical field, she understands about circadian lighting. So I brought her to, we were visiting my son, and I brought her to Lutron, which has the experience of lighting. So everybody thought it was for me, the experience of the Lutron experience, but it was really about her. And I allowed the person to just deal with her while I stood in the back and watched how she reacted. And so now, I said, okay, now we can work on the lighting of that. So with the paint, I hired the painters to do the paint. She went on vacation. I kind of, explained to her that it was a little harsh. She didn't believe me because I had before and after videos. She said it was a little harsh. I said, but we'll calm it down with wall slats. We'll change your bedding. We introduced green bedding. The flooring, she's a little picky about. I got flooring samples. I made her walk on it with bare feet to give her that grounding, right? But it's more about what I'm doing is still about cocooning her environment, making her, because her job is very stressful, dealing with clients and their heart and then the commute. So I wanted her to walk into the house where, it's a kind of moment.
Yeah.
And so that's how now I try to do with more of my clients. I want to get into their environment. I want to see how they feel, how they react. I want them to show me, what it is about their environment. So, and it wasn't not until maybe about 2020, I heard about for the very first time was neuroaesthetics. When my business coach had introduced me to a person who was just getting into neuroaesthetics. And he introduced me to a webinar that I participated in. And it had a doctor from the Mayo Clinic and then an architect from New York. And they talked about how, for the very first time, they mentioned how interior designers were the next doctors because they were healing the environment that their clients were in. And I'm like, okay. And then so they were talking about, one designer was talking about, what do you think about making everything black? Because black is gothic, right, to designers, right? But the doctor and the architect said it all depends on how you implement the black. It could, be very exotic. But for me, it was more shutting down my daughter's brain.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And so again, I didn't really talk about it because who do I talk to? I couldn't talk to any of my professors who were my mentors because they had never gone through what I went through. So I just called myself a biophilic. But when I heard about neuroaesthetic, I was trying to find everything about neuroaesthetics, going to webinars, going to, seminars. And now I understood. And so now I'm trying to get other designers to understand that we have a part in helping homeowners, or not just homeowners, but people in the office or in the health industry understand that what we do, we can make a difference.
Absolutely.
But unless we say it or share our stories, nobody's going to really understand. And I kid you not, Peter, when they heard biophilic, they thought it was all about plant.
Oh, really?
And it wasn't. It really wasn't. And the way I explain it is, our eyes is the front door to our brains. So how does our body react? I says, so think of it this way. Has the hair on your arms or the hair on the back of your neck ever risen in an environment? Can you recall an environment? It says that's your eyes telling your brain and your nervous system telling you either you got excited or there's something wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I'll give you a very good example. I got a 64-year-old woman who had fallen in her home. So she had a severe concussion. So as she was healing, she didn't like her bedroom anymore. And so I consulted on that. Beautiful bedroom. She has fractals on artwork. She has a beautiful large room. But, from the hallway, I could already see that there was something, the flow of her bedroom was not what was being given off to her. And people will say it's energy. No, it's how our eyes saw first glance, right? So without telling her, I said, just give me 15 minutes because that's all I really needed. She told me everything, what she didn't like about the room, what she felt in the room. And all I did, Petra, was move furniture, move. I got a tree from somewhere else in the house, brought it into the room. I got orchids. There's this, I don't know what you want to call it. There's this thing against the wall, and it's covered by a sheet. I want to say it's maybe their parents' ashes. I don't know. I didn't want to ask.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I put the tree in front of it to block it. Because that's not the first thing you're going to think about is my parents' ashes. You're going to look at the tree, right? She loves to sit on her bed and read. So I put another tree across a plant, green, and then an orchid plant. And so, so when they came, when the husband came home, they walked in the room and they said, "How come the room looks bigger?"
Really? Yeah.
He goes, "What did you do?" I said, "I didn't buy anything. I just rearranged stuff." So it was that flow, right? So there was something blocking the flow, especially when the husband says he gets out of the bed and he hits his knees. He has to remember that there's a table, right, there that he hits his knees. So I just moved it out of the way and put it on a different wall, right? The adult children would come and the adult children would like flop on their bed now and says, I love this. It's like the room is larger now. What did Rose do? And it was absolutely nothing, right? Just moved some stuff, just made them focus on different things in the room. So from the hallway, they could see the tree. Well, it's bringing nature. When we see nature, it calms the nervous system.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. But she was still having issues sleeping, even after all of the changes. And so she couldn't, and I don't know if it was still the healing process of her accident. So what I had recommended was a weighted blanket, and she could get it in any color, you know. And so she got blue to remind her of the blue sky or the blue ocean. And when she would sit on her bed, she would put it on top of her thighs and then tuck it in her legs, and it made her safe. But what she would do is when she got in bed, she'd put it all the way up to her shoulders. And her husband had to get used to it. But after a while, her husband was saying she was sleeping through the night. She wasn't waking up in the middle of the night and not able to sleep because she would get up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, not able to sleep. And then she would go in a different room because she didn't want to wake her husband. But now she's able to sleep through the night.
How wonderful that these small little details, and it's so personal. It's personal to her. So it's not something where you can dictate anything. It's you have to understand and you have to listen and you have to sense what this person needs.
Yeah, it's exactly, you have to let them tell their story. There was another person, she was all about feng shui. So I had to really learn about feng shui. And feng shui is a philosophy, but what I do is all science-based, right?
Oh, yeah.
So after she told why it was feng shui, I drew a floor plan because she was all about entertaining. She also was about art. She did painting. She did sketching. But her condo had hard edges. So there's columns that are sticking out. And so she was talking about energy. She didn't want the energy to come in and then leave.
Oh, yeah.
And so the floor plan, when I looked at the floor plan, I saw that these columns, because it's, I think she was on the 30th floor. So they're steel columns, but they're all covered by paint. They were all sticking out. So I said, okay, let's put, again, 2 trees that will block that view. And then I said, conversational pieces. I'm all about conversation. So I said, so I got 2 club chairs, and this is just drawing it's a rough sketch, floor plan, 2 club chairs, and then a half a circle couch that looks out to the window of it, looks out at the view of the waterfront. When she looked at it, she goes, it looks like a happy face.
Really?
I said, yes, it is. Right? So I said, that's how I design conversation pieces, right? You already have hard edges. Why would I bring another hard edge furniture? I want to soften the edge, right? I don't want to make it square. I want to make it rounded, soft. I find pieces that they're club chairs. Recently, I just came back from High Point. Are you familiar with High Point?
No.
Okay, so twice a year in North Carolina, they have the biggest furniture and accessory show.
Okay.
And all designers from all over the world come. And I went there specifically looking for biophilic or neuroaesthetic pieces. And I now understand it's like Disney World for designers. It was so huge, I didn't even dent it. But the pieces I found, club chairs that from the outside look like arms that are hugging.
Yeah.
But if you looked at it from the front, you didn't see it. But if you looked at it from the side, it's like somebody took their arms and was hugging someone. I'm like, that's a very interesting piece, right? Yeah. So I took a picture of it, right? So I go with a purpose. And so with the person that was into biophilia, again, we talk about safety, prospect, and refuge. And I said to her, when you go into a restaurant and you're the only one in the restaurant, where do you sit? In the middle of the room? Or do you sit where you could see who's coming in? So there's a back wall, a booth or something. Because my husband does that. He wants to sit where it's facing the door for safety reasons.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we did. I drew a banquet and then a small table where she could see everybody that's coming through the door. It was for safety reasons. And it was fascinating. And I said, she had this piece of furniture, had Indian carvings. And she's like, I don't know what to do with this piece. Right? And I said, okay, part of my culture is a central location where I said, everybody takes off their shoes and I have slippers. So you want everybody, you don't want shoes all over the place. So you can use this as a place where people can put their shoes. You can put their shoes and we can put a little, seat where they can take off their shoes and then put it in this, shelving unit. And then on top, you can have maybe like a wooden bowl where you put your keys. So it's at a central location each time. Then, your brain can see, oh yeah, I put it in this wooden bowl and it's specified for my keys or my garage door opener or my sunglasses. It's there all the time, right? And so she liked that idea. And that was the extent of it. I just gave her those ideas, and whether she did it or not, it was up to her. But, she said,
So you
You need
just
to,
do the consulting then as well?
yeah, that one was on the East Coast.
Oh,
Normally, I
okay.
would love to fly. I would love to fly and get a feel
Mm.
for the space, because that's how I get. I don't know. There's just something about me. I can get inspired easily when I walk into the space. I could see it. Um, but normally, but for this one, I just, did pictures, did Zoom. Yes. So I do consulting. Um, so I try to pick and choose the jobs.
Mm.
I did one project here in the Bay Area. They hired me because they couldn't get their engineers to come into the building because they still wanted to work from home. And when I went to the building, it was, beautiful um, picture windows all the way around. But they couldn't get any engineers to work. And I'm like, it's because it's cold. All they see is computers. There's nothing, engineers need a place to converse, to talk about their problems, to, it's what the Americans call standing at the water cooler.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not standing at the water cooler. They want to be able to stand and draw and sit and draw each other out. And so you need like a lounge area,
Mm.
right? You need something to cover all these computers. So maybe like a planter with all these trees or plants, tall plants, but you could still see the view. Move everybody's desk so they look outside instead of looking at each other, right? Or looking at a wall. But at least when they're thinking, they can look outside and get inspiration from outside.
Exactly.
Because that's all it takes.
Yeah, just that intuition also. You must have a great intuition to get into a space and then realize why they're not working, or why it's not, why they're not productive in that space.
Yeah. I think I realized it while I was still a software engineer, because I had my own house to deal with, right? And so my husband, I could see it in my mind's eye, and my husband couldn't see it. And so when I would tell him certain things, he thought I was losing it.
Really?
This is before I got into design, because I'm an engineer, right? And he's also an engineer, but he's an electrical engineer, right? And so I dealt with color all the time, when I created applications, when Apple was introducing their new, iMacs. I was at the start of that,
Really?
with colors. That's
Yeah.
how far back my engineering goes, right? It was at the start of Windows and iMac. It was plug and play or Windows. I was there and moved along the way and understood that. So, and I was not part of the team that came up with the standard colors, but I was part of the team that QA'd, that wrote how to QA applications on a desktop color, how a user will visualize how they will react. We call them user groups, focus user groups, right? So all of that training back then is how I resolved the issue with my daughter.
But this is so fascinating, because many times we talk about art, and I think this must be almost like full circle with you, because you grew up with your mother nurturing art in you, and also you love to draw, so that must have also, those skills or those transferable skills that you had or the way of thinking helped you in your career as a software engineer. And then again, that career also brought back to the arts. So these things are so interlinked, you know. So the moment it seems at the moment the brain connects with the one and then with the other, then it's like feeding each other.
Yes, I totally agree. I, people think that art, music, and all of that is so different from interior design, right? But it's art. What we do is really art, right? You deal with color, you deal with texture. When COVID hit, I would walk 4 miles a day and go outside and just see what's out there and get my inspiration. And then when we were allowed in person, that's why I always recommended, if the client allowed me to, is to go into their space. Because out there, one, they're comfortable in their space. And then they will tell you their story, whether it's a complaint or whether it's a love, it's still a story.
Yeah.
Right. And so now, full circle, Petra, I understand what my mom meant about empathy and seniors. So I am doing a project right now in the next city. They are building a 5-story apartment complex for transitional seniors. These seniors were once homeless. So now they're given the opportunity to have their own place. So I volunteered to do an apartment, but then I was asked to do one community lounge, one large community lounge and one small. So one community lounge is going to be a lending library. And then one is going to be art.
Beautiful.
Right? But that art is not going to be with paint because there's no sink. So I told the organization, there's other mediums. There's colored pencils, there's markers. Since my daughter was in Japan, I asked her to get origami.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Yes, origami. I've reached out to my nieces who are art fanatics. And they've given me, and I said, these are for seniors who don't know or have never had the opportunity, probably, because I won't know the clients. All I know is they're seniors. Right? So I used to, in my younger years, used to do floral arranging. I used to make it out of clay or, fake plants. But now we're going to do it out of, tissue paper. Something easy, something accessible, right? I got adult coloring books to get them to engage in society again. In the lending library, and I'm drawing the floor plan and also the elevation, I am going to test out this theory. I'm building a 5-foot to 6-foot tree that's 3D. But then the shell, so the branches is going to branch off. And then I'm going to have shelves that are floating shelves off the tree for the books. Right? And so I am going to this weekend work on that, work to see if my theory works. And then I'm going to get my husband to see how we can mount this on the wall, how heavy it's going to be. And then I'm going to go back to, I get invited every year to critique models of up and coming architect students. So I'm going to get them to critique my design and see if it's going to work. And see if if there are other ideas, right? So this is one way of getting the seniors to come out of their apartment and to mingle and to read and not take the book back to their apartment, right? And then and then for the art lounge, everybody needs art. There are other designers in this group who are doing music, right? And games. So each floor is going to have a theme, right? And this is very personal to me because I've had family members that were once homeless. And so it's taken them. So over the course of the 2 years, I've helped the family members come out of that. And so I understand that filling an apartment complex with stuff is not how to do it. This family member, it took them almost a year to sleep in that bed because they were used to not sleeping in a bed, right? It took them almost a year to sit at that table because they're not used to, right? So it's getting them acclimated in their environment. So I'm, slowly, and that's why I pick very specific pieces for this apartment. I'm picking very specific pieces for the community lounge. And I want to make sure that I could bring the outdoors in to get them excited about, wow, it's going to be, I've been really working on that artistic side of me, of creating that tree. I actually, was drawing it out. I was actually drawing it out during a meeting. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. But let me show you just a rough, it's just a rough.
Yeah.
Oh, my mouse broke. And I can't. Okay, well, let me see if I could do it this way. But I started drawing just, the tree. I just started drawing the tree and, what it was going to be about. And so, and how tall it was going to be. And I'm looking at the site plans now to draw the dimensions and, how many walls I need to do. And then this weekend with my husband, I'm going to go and look for, the materials because I'm, thinking of chicken wire and moss and, and how, and how I'm going to bend it and how the shelving unit is going to be the extension of the branch and we could lay the books and then categorize each branch tree. I am going to put the heavier books at the base, like the trunk.
Oh, yes.
Right. And then the smaller ones, so, but yeah, I'm excited about this project,
So great. And it's so great that it, it has a purpose. It's not just randomly and it's for people who really need that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's why my team keeps saying you can't just only work on pro bono projects. I said, yes, I can because I'm the owner.
Yes, that is meaningful, yes. And I think you touch so many people through it. So I agree with you. Yeah.
Yes. And people just don't understand. There are a lot of people who, young and old. I met, I had someone reach out to me who found out that they were on this, their child was on the spectrum, right? Very smart boy. But he kept breaking things, but he loved the underwater. He loved the mammals, the water mammals, right? And so what I did for the mother, and I said, here's the concept. Here are the colors for the wall. And since your son is on the spectrum, we need materials so that he could touch and feel and engage in his own room. And I said, so I had the architect students draw a shark on the wall. But the eye, and it was a happy shark, not a scary shark.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would get the eyes that you could pop and it would make a sound.
Yeah.
So he would laugh at it, right? Or the starfish, and I would get light sandpaper. So it would feel like, a starfish. And then the little seaweeds that were flowing in the water. I got textured velvet. So no matter which way the young boy felt, it was moving, with him. And of course, everybody know who Nemo is. So,
oh yes,
right. So got Nemo, and but I let the mother do it at her own leisure, but gave her the templates to do that, right? And then I met another designer at a retreat who I was explaining this at our table, and she privately told me that she had a 5-year-old son that was also on the spectrum. I'm, that part of me, I forward her the design for free. And she's like, Rose, I can't. And I'm like, no, I already know what it's like, to have someone on the spectrum like that. Because I do have a family member that's on the spectrum like that. I just don't talk about it. And so, that's just how I was raised, to be compassionate, to be empathetic, to be intentional, to have meaning. I'd rather see someone else happy, because then it really makes me feel, good inside my purpose. Yeah. Right. So, that's how I got into this. And really, someone said, I really saved my daughter's life, because I look at her now, Petra, she's 30 years old. She's going to be 31. And where she was when she was 22, what a difference. She is outgoing now. She used to only wear black and gray. She's now wearing colors.
Wow.
She's wearing more vibrant colors. She's more into the florals, or, she never used to, right? She can see now, when she goes shopping, she'll say, oh, mom looks good in that one. That's a mom. That's not me. Or, she'll say, dad looks good in this color. Or she'll say, both of you look good in these colors. So now it's coming.
Yeah. And amazing that it took a long time, but it's there. And we also have to be patient, with these things, to know that it takes, I think sometimes we forget, it takes a long time for things to deteriorate, but it takes also a long time for things to be repaired again, or to get to the point where everything is fine.
Right. And at one of the, so I was on a panel this past summer, and it was designers and furniture manufacturers. And what I expressed to the designers is, if you're going to get into this field of biophilia and neuroaesthetics, right? I said, the project never ends, because what you start with, if it's a cocoon-like safe environment, I said, your client has to get acclimated and grow into that environment. And then, like my daughter, she was 22. And it has taken her almost 8 years to want to change her environment, that she was ready. Her brain was ready. Her nervous system was ready. Her eyes were ready, right? And so I mentioned it to the designers. So your clients, that project doesn't end, right? It will come back. And then your clients will come back and say, I'm ready for another change. So you have to have that in mind when you pick pieces. What are the pieces that can grow with them? And what are the pieces that are not? And you can probably use pieces within the house. And that's what I did. Use pieces that were in the house for that one client, right? Especially with the one who had the concussion. We didn't have any, I didn't buy anything. It's just moved pieces, right? The one that had the feng shui, she had pieces. So basically just gave her ideas on how to play with it. So, and so it's really intentional. It's a process, and it's going to keep growing. It doesn't stop. So if you're in it for the long haul, then yes, get into it. If you think, and patience, you're going to need patience. It's going to change. And, but because we have the science to back it up, we can explain to the clients why this piece works better than that piece. If they plan to change, a piece, they're going to say, well, why? What does that piece make you feel? As opposed to this piece. If you're going to change a carpet, how do you want to get up and you put it by your bed? How do you want your feet to feel? Because that's the first thing.
When you wake up, yeah.
When you wake up, right? So every piece is intentional. Every piece has to make you feel something, right? It's going to wake up your nervous system. It's not about, I said it's not about curating furniture or accessories. It's curating well-being in your own environment. And when I critique the students, that's what I express. When you design, when you model, think about who your client is. When you look at your assignment, because I said, I've been through your assignment. I was trained. I went through these courses, right? But I said, I had to really think, who are my client? Who am I designing for? Who's going to use this building, right? Because at the end of the day, at the end of your 2 years that I'm with you, you're going to have this one big project where an organization that houses young folks like you who were once homeless are also going to have the opportunity to have their own place. So design for them. Put yourself in that shoe, right? That's why it comes so easy for me to have a senior in mind, because one of the family members was a senior who, and so I knew.
You had that experience.
Yes, right. And so now I understand. So I have it on both sides. I had a daughter who experienced trauma at such a young age. It took her these many years, and it's still evolving, right? And then I have a family member, no fault of theirs, but was in a situation, right, and needed to get out of that situation. And now when they were willing to tell me I finally slept in the bed, or I finally put up the bed, and all I could say is congratulations. Good for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I couldn't force them.
Exactly.
In the beginning, I would ask. I stopped asking because it had to be on their own terms.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so that's, as a designer, we can't force. We have to make it, what do they call it? I always make it sound like they're suggesting it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Even though I've already said it, maybe
Yeah.
5-10 minutes,
Because I have to,
ago,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's still planted in their head,
Mm,
and then it's just resurrected, right?
mm.
In the conversation. So
Yeah, but this is so wonderful. It makes me think so much about the environment and how important it is, that we design like that, or that we think about design like that. But what are the wishes for you for the future? What is the dream for you, Rose?
dream for me is, and you, thank you for this invitation. The dream for me moving forward was trying to get this message out
Mm.
as a designer. COVID did a number on everybody, on their mental state, right? Um, we have seniors that are out there who feel hopeless,
Exactly.
right? And so, as designers, I learned it's not about the luxury. You can still um, design for luxury, but are those clients' mental state? Do they have anxiety? Do they have stress? Those are the kinds of things we as designers have to tap into,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And so that's my goal, is to get the word out, to invite more designers to learn about what their role is in design. Doesn't necessarily have to be that they get into biophilia or neuroaesthetics,
Yeah.
right? Um, it could be green, it could be sustainable, right? But what I've also learned is sustainability and green. If the materials in the product is all green and sustainable, but the end product is ugly, is it sustainable and green?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I,
Yeah.
I wouldn't sell
Mm.
it to my client, right? So they all have to work hand in hand with beauty, because our eyes and our brain is going to process it, and it's going to make a big difference in the world, right? And I now, have met a lot of designers, and they have whispered their experience of what they did and how they have saved lives with how they stepped in, and they are just now learning about the term, neuroaesthetics and biophilia. And so a lot of the organizations and manufacturers of goods, that's our goal for 2026, is to talk more about this, to get designers and even students. It's not about creating kitchens and baths. What can we do in the kitchen and bath industry,
Yeah.
to make it holistic,
Mm.
right? Or if you're going to be in the remodeling business, the architects are already ahead of the game with the built environment, right? The exterior. But now they have to understand the interior. And see, that's what
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
do when I talk to the architect students, when I critique, to think about the interior. So that's my goal, is to speak about this more. And, I have read all of, I watched the episode with Dr. Chatterjee.
Oh, yes. Oh, he's so
Very,
lovely. Mm.
it just blows my mind.
Mm.
You know, I just got off of a webinar with Ty Farrow.
Mm.
He wrote a book on constructing health. His book is very fascinating. And there are other books that I tap into. One of the books that I'm reading right now is The Nature Fix. And everything in that book, is so easy to implement in design, that I'm trying to put together a checklist. That's why I put out on my social media just tidbits of what designers can do,
The
right?
important things. But you
Yeah.
mentioned, yeah, something that you mentioned before also about the design. I was thinking recently also is about kitchens, because people keep saying architects and designers make kitchens smaller because people don't cook anymore for themselves. And I wondered if it's not the other way around. If we don't cook because it's so easy to just, get a small little kitchen in a corner, and this makes it. And I'm thinking the kitchen used to be the heart of the home because it's where the cooking, where the nourishment and all that comes from. And you think that is the one thing in houses now that's so skimped and it's so made. And I'm talking about Europe now. In America, it's probably different. But you find these small apartments in Europe where there's barely a kitchen. So I think sometimes with design, I'm always happy when things start getting back to normal, where people start thinking about what is the important thing in the home. It's isn't it this, or isn't it the color, or isn't it that the natural environment that we put ourselves in, because we spend so much time in our homes.
If, here in California, we're all about the kitchen.
Oh, okay.
We love the gathering, right? Um, and if we hadn't learned anything from COVID, is COVID taught us, well, here in the Bay Area anyway, that we spent so much time outside that we didn't know how to interact with our own family members.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, culturally, I have always integrated my family to come, and let's have our family gatherings or eat. We've always eaten together as a family. I have a round kitchen table, so everybody is equal. And everybody would go around the table and express how their day was, and then we would talk about it, and then discussion, right? So for me, for kitchen, I'm doing one big kitchen right now, and these clients have waited until they became empty nesters, and they have a beautiful home. And so I said, let's open up. I said, let's flip your house. So he has a man cave in the family room. The kitchen's in the middle. And then he also has a man cave living room. So he has two man caves. So what's for the wife? Right? So we're flipping everything. So we're putting the eating dining room in his man cave in the family room, which is now currently the family room. We're opening up all the windows. So they have two 6 feet windows and a slider. We're going to turn the 6 feet windows into sliders so that they can easily go outside. And then we're going to take the slider and create a pony window so they can still look outside. The kitchen is going to be an open concept. They love to invite all their children and entertain. So we have this big island. No upper cabinet so that they can see the view outside in their backyard. And then in the living room, we just reversed everything, because right now they're looking out into the backyard, but we want to bring that whole kitchen, dining room, man cave to look outside. And we're just reversing the living room to look out into the street. So at least it's all about zones. I've created zones for them. So they're pretty excited. It took almost a whole year
Really?
because I wanted to get the whole family involved.
Mm.
Why? It's not about just mom and dad.
Mm.
This client, they're in their 60s. So one day, their adult children are going to come and take care of them, right? In that very house if they don't plan to sell it.
Mm.
So I might as well talk to their adult children
Yeah.
and what they envisioned, right? So I went and got like samples of countertops. I
Mm.
said, you guys play with it, touch it, put it out in the, I want you to see it throughout the day. When you wake up in the morning, make that cup of coffee on the weekends when you're having breakfast, in the afternoon, in the evening, put it up. And then I did the same thing with cabinet samples. Put it up there because you guys are the ones who are going to deal with it. I can only recommend what brand
Oh, yeah.
and why this one over that.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, you're the ones who are going to live with it. And I said, and your adult children have to be here because they're the ones who are going to have to cook for you. So a very
Yeah.
good example is, the cooktop, the knobs. I said, even though the client has perfect eyes, one day it won't be. So the knobs, when they turn it on, the light turns on the knob.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
No other knobs are turned on. So
Mm.
at least they can see,
Yeah.
right? And the children can see.
And
So,
and it's these little things that's so important for
oh
them.
yeah,
Mm.
even disposal.
Oh, okay.
The disposal currently is across the counter, lights like a light switch. So you have to
Mm.
like reach over, right? No. So now it's just a button
Mm.
that they just have to press. It could be under mounted. I haven't figured out yet if it's easier, if they have arthritis, if it's going to be under mount or over mount. So yeah, it's the detail. It's really,
Mm.
really the detail, and that's why I'm working with an architect. Even
Mm.
though I could do it myself, it's easier to um, throw ideas and share ideas with the architect
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
with what we're doing. So
Mm.
collaborating with everybody,
Mm. But
and
this is,
even with
yeah, this is
yeah
so,
with
yeah, sorry. Mm.
with the vendors, collaborating with all the vendors as well. Very
Mm.
important, very very important. So
But this is so amazing and really such great work that you're doing. And I'm so glad we got to talk and hear your very personal story as well, and how that also now shapes how you work, and how that inspired also what you do now. So thank you so much, Rose. This was such a wonderful conversation,
thank you.
really.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to share my story on your platform, and I hope it inspires others to not give
Yes.
up.
Mm.
That art, whether it's music or dancing or illustrating or painting, has a major part in our lives. It's not going to go away. It's part of
Exactly.
who we are,
Mm.
right? And just to get everybody to get outside, get
Yes.
inspired,
Mm.
right? Look at nature. You'll
Mm.
look at nature differently. You
Mm.
really will. You'll take in the air differently, and get inspired that way. So thank you again.
It's a great pleasure, and all the best with the work you're doing, and um, may your wishes come true, and may the dream of how you want to work and see others uh, understand your approach also, and how fortunate all the students and everybody that can learn from you.
Well, one day, Petra, if I ever make it to Vienna, I'll come and look you up if you're still there.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
please do.
Yeah.
That would
Because
be
I did
wonderful.
visit, yeah, I did visit the Netherlands. I loved it. This was in
Really.
2019.
Mm.
So I want to go back. I want to go back.
Please let me know. Yeah, definitely. Please let me know. And we will definitely go and have some coffee in one of our beautiful coffee houses.
Thank you. It's going to be on my bucket list.
Okay, yeah, and it will be on my wish
right.
list.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you again.
It's a great
and
pleasure,
all the best
Rose.
to you.
Thank you so much, and to you too.